Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate deck techs. I'm covering every legendary creature and background for Baldur's Gate in no particular order, so let's get to it. As you see, today our commander is Zevlor, Elturel Exile, the leader of a band of tieflings from the city of Elturel. They were exiled from their home after the city was temporarily dragged into Avernus, a terrible event which fomented resentment and distrust of tieflings and later led to their banishment. Zevlor himself was a commander in Elturel's elite cavalry unit, and he put those skills to good use in shepherding his fellow refugees to Baldur's Gate. His role as a benevolent and humble savior is a little at odds with his Grixis color identity, but he seems like a cool guy. I'm excited to show you what I put together for Zevlor, but before we get started, let's go over our deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a great card and why I thought it deserved a deck of its own. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 Wraths, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commander. Zevlor Elturel Exile is a 4/2 legendary tiefling warrior for 1, a blue, a black, and a red. Zevlor has haste and pay 2 and tap. When we next cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single opponent or a single permanent an opponent controls this turn, for each other opponent we choose that player or a permanent they control, copy our spell, and the copy targets the chosen player or permanent. Notably, Zevlor has a day 0 errata that adds a word, and that word is only. When we next cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single opponent or a single permanent an opponent controls this turn. That's important, and we'll talk more about it as we get into the deck. But really, what a neat ability. This does a pretty good job of saying pay 2 and tap to give your next instant or sorcery myriad. Especially in these colors, it's exciting to think that any spell we send at an opponent or something on their playmat will instead go to all our opponents or something on each of their playmats. And since Zevlor has haste, if we have the mana, we can do that the turn he comes down. Now, I'm no stranger to Spellslinger decks, but I wanted to do something a little different for Zevlor. He's not looking to storm out or chain card advantage spells or any of the usual silliness. He's essentially a knight, a protector of his people, and his proficiency on the battlefield is secondary to his role as a guardian and a guide. With his backstory, I would almost expect him to be green-white. Nevertheless, he's a warrior at the head of a group of strong fighters who wants us to cast spells. Well, what's the best way to represent that? Maybe a tokens generator or a clones deck? Kinda straightforward. Perhaps we take a typal strategy like zombies or goblins and use our commander to back them up with spells? No, he's a warrior and that's too wizardly. Zevlor wants us to target our opponents and their stuff with our spells, so how do we strike a balance between the army he wants to command and the magical method he expects us to employ? We're going all the way back to Onslaught for the answer. Threaten is a now classic effect in Magic. 2 and a red to steal an opponent's creature just for the turn. It grants that creature haste and untaps it, giving us a temporary attacker while simultaneously depriving an opponent of a potential blocker. You may be more familiar with this effect as Active Treason, which is essentially the same spell, but more recently printed. We get a new Threaten or Active Treason effect in almost every set nowadays, and usually it comes with a little extra utility staped on. And while they're fun and limited, they don't show up as often in Commander outside Red X sacrifice decks. But what if every Threaten stole from not one opponent, but each of them? What if we spent just 2 extra mana and got to yoink the best creature on each of our opponent's boards, then send them all back at their owners? Or even better, what if we sent all 3 at one opponent, the one least able to defend themselves? Everyone's down a creature, but this is going to hurt one opponent more than the others based on what their board is left with. So we have the option of either sending those creatures at that opponent and probably doing the most damage, or we can stampede them toward the opponent with the best defenses and put some holes in their wall. It may cost us some or all of our ill-gotten attackers, but what do we care? They're rentals. This sounds like a fragile strategy. If we're spending 3 or 4 mana on a Threaten plus 2 more to tap Zevlor and myriadize our spell, where are we getting the mana to build out a more permanent board of our own? That's a fair complaint, and we do have some ways to address it. One is generating token creatures to serve as blockers, especially via magecraft abilities that trigger when we cast and when we copy our spells. Another is a suite of cards that produce extra mana we can put towards Zevlor's ability, freeing up our land base for everything else we cast. But the best way is by using our spells strategically. If we know one of our opponents is likely going to take advantage of us when our shields are down, we can send our contingent of conscripts at them, weakening their next attack in the process. Or we can use one of our many non-threatened spells to cut them off at their knees. In this color combination, it's no surprise our removal suite is stacked. Best of all, we can play things politically, letting our opponents choose which of their opponent's creatures we'll co-opt with our threatens and who we'll target with our tricks. Instead of a "your stuff is mine, deal with it" vibe, we cultivate one that's more like "consider carefully how you hone your blade because it's just as sharp in our hands." And we can take advantage of alliances and discord at the table alike. If our attitude is less predatory and villainous and more sharing is caring, we end up making things more fun for the entire pod. We're not thieves after all, we just want to borrow things for a bit. You'll enjoy this deck if you'd like to try a playstyle that rewards threat assessment in an unusual way, or if you're the sort who likes to go out to dinner and try a little of everyone's order, complementing their taste after each and every bite. So, as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will find a considering section, stuffed to the brim, full of cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately which didn't make the cut for me. However, if you have a bigger budget, or a smaller one, although today's budget is quite low, if you have an interest in playing this deck in a little bit different way than I did, or if you like what I've done and you want to go harder into it, that considering section is a great place to begin when you build your own Zevlor Elturel Exile deck. So before we get started, I want to check in with a little bit of a strange section. This is the Zevloves section. It's just a section that I've used to tag every card that will work with Zevlor's ability. These are all instants and sorceries that target either a single opponent or a single permanent that an opponent can control. Sometimes you can do one or the other depending on how the modal spells work, but these are all cards that will work well with Zevlor and can be, as I said, myriadized. So I just wanted to set that aside. We're not going to go through these in this section. We're going to go through them in the sections they fit in, and we're going to start with our threatens. These threatens, there we go. These are 16 different cards that are all instants and sorceries and all do the threaten or act of betrayal thing. We're going to start with Jet's Brainwashing, which is actually a kicker spell. This is a single red for a sorcery with kicker of 3 that says target creature can't block this turn, and if this spell is kicked, gain control of that creature until end of turn, untap it, and it gains haste until end of turn, and create a clue token. Clue tokens are artifacts that if you pay 2 and sacrifice them, you get to draw a card. So if we don't kick this is a single red to make a creature unable to block and to make a clue. Or if we have activated Zevlor and we target a creature that one of our opponents controls, let's say it's opponent A, then we'll get to make copies of this for a creature target that an opponent B controls and a creature that opponent C controls. So we get 3 creatures that are unable to block, 1 on each playmat, and 3 clue tokens. So that's pretty good as a baseline. But we really want to use this as a 4-mana threaten effect, because if we pay a red and we kick it, those creatures that we make unable to block, we get to steal them for the turn, and we get those clues. So that's the idea with Jet's Brainwashing. We use this either as an evasive ability, making creatures unable to block us, or as a way to steal creatures for the turn, and we get clues either way, which we can then turn into card draw later. Great. Next we have Besmirch. This is 1 and double red for a sorcery that threatens at the end until end of turn. We gain control of target creature, it gains haste, we untap it, and we goad it. Goad means until our next turn, that creature has to attack each combat if it's able, and attacks a player other than us if it's able to. Which means we get to steal some creatures, assuming of course that we've myriadized this with Zevlor, otherwise we're just stealing one creature. Either way, whatever creature or creatures we have taken and attacked with, because we will definitely attack with them since they are goaded. If they survive combat, they're going to go back to their controller, to their previous controller, to their owner, whatever it may be. And on their turn, they're going to be goaded, and they will be until our next turn, so they're going to have to attack, unless they can get tapped down some other way. And when they attack, they have to go at a player other than us if they're able to. If we're the only player left in the game, of course they can come at us. But if there are, battles in play, if there are planeswalkers in play, those creatures are not allowed to attack those things unless they have no other options. They have to attack a player other than us. Which means, assuming those creatures don't have vigilance, those creatures are going to be tapped down by the time our next turn comes around because they will have either been tapped to avoid having to attack, like as a mana dork, or they will have been tapped because they went and attacked. If they're still around on our next turn, they're not going to be able to block us, and they won't have been able to come at us, of course, assuming we're not the only other player left in the game. So yeah, Besmirch is a way of protecting us from those creatures, at least for the turn cycle, after we've stolen those creatures and used them to threaten our opponents. Next up is Furnace Rains. This is from March of the Machine. 2 and a red for a sorcery that says gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it, and until end of turn it gains haste, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player or battle, we make a treasure token. So this is a great way to get a little bit of a refund. If we Myriadize with Zevlor, and then we cast our Furnace Rains, then assuming we have to steal 3 creatures and they all do combat damage to players, or I guess battles, we don't have any battles in this deck, but who knows, then we're going to get a treasure for each one, and we will have refunded ourselves for Furnace Rains. So a little bit of a possibility for getting a little bit of treasure back, or a little bit of mana back for ourselves. It gives us a good incentive to go after whichever player no longer has any defenders or just doesn't have any defenders, so that we can do the maximum amount of damage and get the maximum value from those treasures. Nice. Next up is Kari Zev's Expertise. This is 1 and double red for a sorcery that's just threaten. Gain control of target creature or vehicle, I guess we can get a vehicle too, until end of turn, untap it, and it gains haste until end of turn. We do have a couple of these that can take control of artifacts. This is specifically just vehicles, but that's pretty nice. We might be able to use that. But in any case, it's just a regular old active treason effect. That also lets us cast a spell mana value 2 or less from our hand without paying its mana cost. Don't have a lot of those in this deck. We've got plenty, but most of our spells are 3 and 4 mana. So yeah, the possibility of a free spell on top of a threatened effect, that's a nice little bonus for us. Next is Price of Loyalty, another one with just a small bonus. 2 and a red for a sorcery, gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it, it gains haste until end of turn, and if mana from a treasure was spent to cast this spell, that creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So we have a number of ways of making treasure in this deck. We've already seen a couple of them, or at least one of them. And if we use just a single treasure for Price of Loyalty, plus mana from our lands or our artifacts for the rest of it, then if we have myriadized this, whatever creatures get targeted with it are all going to get that little trumpet blast for their attack, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, this is what happens an awful lot in these effects. They are just little variations on the same thing, but those little variations can make a difference. Something else I should mention here, it does not say target creature an opponent controls. Which means if we wanted to, we could use this just to untap one of our own creatures, because maybe that creature has stun counters on it, maybe it's been tapped down by some kind of sleep effect or claustrophobia, the enchantments that tap a creature and they don't untap during their controller's untap step. We can use our threatens to just untap our own creatures and maybe give them a little bonus. So yeah, but usually we're using this to take our opponent's stuff and myriadizing it with Zevlor. Next is Traitorous Blood, another 1 and double red sorcery that gains control of target creature until end of turn, untaps it, and it gives it trample and haste until end of turn. So our little bonus that we get here is that the creature gets an evasive ability. That's pretty good. There is a version of this, which is a 4 mana red sorcery that threatens and gives menace, which is pretty nice. I don't believe I included that in this deck, just because I liked to focus on the 3 mana ones if I could. And Trample's still pretty good. Giving it to 3 different creatures, 1 from each opponent's playmat, is pretty nice for us. Next is Unwilling Recruit. Triple red and X for a sorcery that gains control of a creature until end of turn, untaps it, and gives it a power boost equal to that X, plus of course haste until end of turn. So if we pump a lot of mana into this, if we spend, 10 mana, 2 to myriadize, and then X equals 5, then we're going to steal 3 creatures, 1 from each opponent. They all get +5/+0, and they get to attack in. Even if X is just 0, triple red is not hard for us to hit in this deck. The deck is primarily red, so being able to use this as just a regular old threaten, still pretty good. Next up is Vengeful Possession from Duskmourn. 2 and a red for sorcery, gain control of a creature, untap it, it gains haste until end of turn, and you may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. So if we need to get rid of one of the extraneous lands in our hand, or a card that we don't think we're just going to get to and we just need something better, this gives us a chance to rummage in addition to threatening, and that seems pretty good. Just a nice little additional bonus. Next, we have a little bit of a weird one. This is Grab the Reins. 3 and a red for an instant that says choose either until end of turn you gain control of target creature and it gains haste. It does not untap that creature, notably, so it's not quite the same as our usual threaten effects. Or sacrifice a creature and then Grab the Reins deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. And this has Entwine for 2 and a red, meaning if we pay the Entwine cost, which is sort of like a kicker cost, we get to choose both of these. Notably, if we don't entwine it and we just do the first one, we can myriadize it because we are only gaining control of a creature and giving it haste, whether or not it's tapped. So we want to, if we use that and myriadize it, we want to choose all creatures that are untapped because otherwise we can't do much with them. If we choose the second mode, we get to sacrifice a single creature, and then any target that we're doing damage to, if we're targeting a creature, then we're going to get to target 3 creatures if it's been myriadized. If we're targeting a player, then we can hit all 3 of our opponents if it's been myriadized. So either of those effects for a total of 6 mana, 2 to activate Zevlor and then 4, seems pretty good. But if we entwine it, and we get to do both of these, we can no longer myriadize it. The reason is because it targets a creature and any target. And we can't have that be the same creature. If we were able to gain control of that creature and then sack it and have it do damage to itself, then we could myriadize it. It wouldn't make any difference. But Zevlor only lets us use his effect when we next cast an instant or sorcery that targets only a single opponent or a single permanent an opponent controls. If we've got 2 different targets, this creature and whatever we're doing damage to, then we cannot use, Zevlor's ability won't trigger after we've activated it. So entwining it won't let us myriadize. However, we can entwine if we want to just anyway, and the simplest thing is to steal an opponent's creature and then immediately sacrifice it and fling it at something. You know, grab the reins, do damage equal to its power to any target, which could be that creature's controller. It could be that creature's controller's other creatures. It could be some other person at the table, whatever we want. We just want to remember that entwining prevents us from using Grab the Reins' ability, both of their abilities, and also myriadizing it. But we can myriadize the first mode or the second mode. Yeah, pretty good. Next up is Enthrall to the Pit. There is another version of this that I think costs 1 less mana and is black and blue in the considering section, but I went with the one that we can cast at a lower cost if we want to, and maybe at a higher cost if we can't afford the kicker. So Enthrall to the Pit is a sorcery from Dominaria United for 3 and a red, with kicker for 2 and a black. So we'd have to spend 5 a red and a black in order to kick it. And it says gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it, and it gains haste until end of turn. So it's a 4 mana threaten. But if it was kicked, we then sacrifice that creature at the beginning of the next end step. So we can use this as a threaten that is also a removal effect. So we just steal a creature, or if we've got 9 mana, we can kick it, pay for it, and myriadize it, and we can steal 1 from each opponent's playmat, attack with them, and if any or all of them survive, they're not going to go back to their controller anyway, because they're getting sacrificed at the next end step. So it's just gone, and we get the last bite at the apple. Pretty neat. Next is Involuntary Employment. This is from Streets of New Capenna, one of my favorite sets, but also it's reprinted in Foundations, so it should be pretty easy to find. 3 and a red for a sorcery that says gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it, and it gains haste until end of turn, and just make a treasure. As opposed to the spell we saw a minute ago, Furnace Rains. Furnace Rains costs 1 less than Involuntary Employment, but it only makes treasure for us if the creature or creatures that we've hit with it connect and do damage to a player or battle. Involuntary employment costs 1 more, but it gives us those treasures anyway. So if we myriadize this, if we pay the 2, activate Zevlor, and then cast involuntary employment, we've spent 6 mana, but if we get 3 creatures out of it, we're getting 3 treasures back right away. So it's an aggregate 3 mana spent, essentially. Or if you want to think of it as we're being refunded those 3 mana right away before we even attack. Seems pretty good. Next is Malevolent Whispers. 3 and a red for a sorcery that says gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it, and it gets +2/+0 in haste until end of turn. So we get a little bit of a Trumpet Blast built right in, and that's pretty nice. It also has Madness for 3 and a red. So if we discard it into Exile, and when we do, we can cast it for its Madness cost or put it in our graveyard. Essentially, the idea here is we can cast this normally, or if we happen to discard it for some reason, we can cast it for its Madness cost. We don't have a lot of ways to discard cards in this deck, but Vengeful Possession is one of them. So if we end up casting Malevolent Whispers after Vengeful Possession, then we've got 1 extra time that we're able to threaten something. And if we've cast Vengeful Possession and then activated Zevlor with Vengeful Possession on the stack, then Zevlor is not going to trigger off of Vengeful Possession since it's already been cast. But if we use it to threaten one thing, then discard Malevolent Whispers, cast it for its Madness cost. When we cast it, Zevlor's ability will trigger, and we'll get to do this for each of our opponents, and all of those creatures are going to get that +2/+0. So ways that we can make this work with Madness. It's just a nice little bonus, but otherwise this is a 4-mana version that comes with the Trumpet Blast for each of our creatures that we hit with it, and that seems good. Next up is Mascot Interception. This is a really cool one. 3 and a red for sorcery that costs 3 generic less to cast if it targets a creature token. And it does what Malevolent Whispers does. Gain control of a creature until end of turn, untap it, +2/+0, and haste. That's all great, but the trick with this is this cost reduction happens when we're casting it, so when we're putting it on the stack. So if we've already activated Zevlor, and we say opponent A has a soldier token or something, we're going to cast Mascot Interception targeting that soldier token, which means we've spent 2 mana to activate Zevlor and just a single red, since it'll cost 3 less. Then Zevlor's ability will trigger, we will get to make copies of it, and it does not need to target creature tokens anymore. Just that first time when we cast it and calculated its cost in order to do so required us to go after the token. We can hit the biggest, scariest creatures on opponent B and C's playmats with those copies if we want, and they get that +2/+0. So we've stolen a token, probably the best token we could have gotten, of our choices, plus the best creature off of the other 2 players' playmats, and all it cost us was a total of 2 and a red, 2 to activate Zevlor, and a single red for Mascot Interception. Kind of a cool interaction there. Next is Sibling Rivalry. This is from the Brothers' War. 3 and a red for a sorcery that gains control of an artifact or creature until end of turn, untaps it and gives it haste, and we make a Power Stone token. Power Stone tokens are artifacts that if we tap them, they make a colorless mana that we cannot spend to cast a non-artifact spell. So kind of a weird double negative here, but I'll explain what it is. Basically, the way to think of Power Stones is that you can use their mana to do 3 things. One is to cast artifact spells. We have, in this deck, 11 artifacts, one of which actually is a Power Stone. We'll talk about that a little more later. So we can use this for the generic mana cost of artifact spells. That's great. Might as well have a little rock, even if it's limited in its usefulness of its mana. The second thing we can do with that mana is not cast spells, but rather pay costs. So if someone is running Rhystic Study, or Smothering Tithe, or if we just target someone or some creature that has Ward, we can pay that triggered ability on Ward, or pay the cost of Rhystic Study, or pay the cost of Smothering Tithe. Paying those kinds of costs is something we can use our Power Stone mana for. But most relevantly in this deck, the other thing we can do with it is we can activate it. You can use it to pay the cost of activated abilities, like Zevlor's ability. We can use this Power Stone mana as one of the 2 mana we pay into Zevlor in order to activate him and set ourselves up for our next instant or sorcery that only targets one thing. So yeah, that's why we've got Sibling Rivalry in this deck, so that we can use that Power Stone mana as a little bit of an assistance for helping us to cast or to activate Zevlor. And that's stapled onto a threatened effect. Works perfectly for us. Next is Traitorous Greed. This is one of my favorite threatened effects. It's 3 and a red for a sorcery that gains control of target creature until end of turn, untaps it, gives it haste, and then adds 2 mana of any one color to our pool. So we just get to have some extra mana, just 2 mana. This is sort of the same as Involuntary Employment, but rather than giving us a treasure that we can use later, it gives us 2 mana that we have to use this phase. So if we were to myriadize this with Zevlor, we're spending 2 to activate Zevlor, and then 4 more for a total of 6 to cast Traitorous Greed. But if we then get, with our copies and the original, 3 creatures, then we will have added 2 mana 3 times, so we've got our 6 mana back. We have to spend it right away. We don't get to bank it, but if we've got more spells in hand, and we probably do, this is like we got to activate Zevlor and cast Traitorous Greed for free. In addition, since it makes that mana of any color 3 times, we could do 2 red, 2 blue, 2 black if we wanted to. We can kind of use this for mana fixing for our other spells. Just kind of an interesting version of this threatened effect, and I just think it's fun. Finally, we have a little bit of a weird one. It's Call for Aid. This is 4 and a red for a sorcery that does not target a creature. Instead, it lets us gain control of all creatures target opponent controls. We can just target opponent. We do that until end of turn, we untap them, they gain haste, so it's threatened so far, but they can't attack their controller, the player that controlled them the most recently, and they can't be sacrificed this turn. So I'm saying they're the controller that controlled them most recently because they might have been stolen by someone else. They may not be controlled by their owner when we do this. But the point is, we cast Call for Aid, targeting opponent A, we myriadize it with our commander, and we get to target opponents B and C as well. Now we've stolen every creature on the battlefield. We just can't send them at the person we stole them from. So what we do is we shift them to the side. All the opponent A's creatures go to opponent B. Opponent B's creatures go to opponent C. Opponent C's creatures go to opponent A. Or we say opponent A and C's creatures all go to opponent B, and we take opponent B's creatures and split them up. Because what's great about this is none of these creatures are going to be blocked unless someone can flash in a blocker, because we've stolen every creature on the battlefield. So we can attack with our creatures as well, if we've got some that we want to, and everything's getting through, essentially. We can't sacrifice anything, and we can't attack the player that we got the creatures from, but this is a great way for 7 mana to essentially kill at least one person. It might kill everyone. So yeah, Call for Aid is very strong for us. It's our sort of like uber threatened effect, and it's just pretty fun. So yeah, for 15 cents, why not? So that covers our threatened section. We're going to go now to our actual theft section. These are all cards, some of which do the threatened thing as well, but not as instants and sorceries that we could copy with Zevlor, even though we do have a few of those in this section too. Next up we have You Find Some Prisoners from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. This is 1 and a red for an instant that lets us either break their chains, which is destroy target artifact, or interrogate them, which is exile the top 3 cards of a target opponent's library, choose 1, and until end of turn you can play that card, and you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. So this can be myriadized with Zevlor. If we choose the first mode, then we're going to get to destroy an artifact on each player's playmat. Each opponent's playmat, that is. That's good. If we choose Interrogate them, we get to exile the top 3 cards of opponent A's library, pick one, and until the end of our next turn we can play it and we can fix our mana for it. And we'll do that for opponent B, and we'll do that for opponent C. So it sort of draws us 3 cards, just one from the top 3 of each of our opponent's decks. 2 things to know about it though. It says until the end of your next turn you may play that card, which means if one of the cards we find is a land, we can play it this turn or on our next turn as our land drop. We don't get to put it into play just cause, it's got to be as our land drop, but this doesn't say you may cast that card, it says you may play, which means we can cast spells or play lands. We just don't get a special permission to do so. It all has to be at the right timing. The second thing to know about this is it says you may spend mana as though it were any mana or mana of any color to cast it. Some of these effects say you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast it. The difference there is when there is a colorless mana symbol in the casting cost. Not a generic mana symbol, like you find for some prisoners, but specifically colorless mana. Like with certain Eldrazi, they require actual colorless mana to cast. I know you're thinking, but it says mana of any color. Well, it sounds funny to say, colorless mana is not one of the 5 colors of Magic. Colors are not colorless. So if mana of any type, you basically just look at the mana value, and that's the amount of any kind of mana you spend. If it says mana of any color, like this, that's true for any kind of mana in the casting cost other than colorless. If you were to cast one of those spells, and it has colorless pips in the cost, you still have to spend actual colorless mana on those pips with You Find Some Prisoners. Luckily, we have a few cards in our land base that will make that for us. And it doesn't come up that often anyway. There's not that many cards that require actual, factual, colorless mana to cast them, but sometimes, so worth noting. And You Find Some Prisoners, like I mentioned, for either of these modes, can be myriadized with Zevlor. Next we have Decadent Dragon, which is an adventure creature. So this is a 4/4 dragon for 2 and double red, with flying and trample, that whenever it attacks, we make a treasure. So already a sweet dragon with great Wiley Beckett art. I really like this art. That gives us treasures, and, that's pretty great. In addition, it's a 4/4 flyer with trample for just 4 mana. It's totally good rate for this kind of creature. But it also has an adventure, an instant called Expensive Taste for 2 and a black, which lets us exile the top 2 cards of target's opponent's library face down. Notably, exile is always face up unless otherwise specified, and then we can look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. So this is an adventure. So if you're not familiar with adventures, the way this works is, while this card is in your hand, you can either cast the dragon, and then you ignore the adventure, or you can cast the adventure, and once it resolves, the card goes into exile, and you can cast the dragon only from exile just by paying its casting cost, just casting it normally. You don't even have to wait for a later turn if you've already got the mana for it. But you can't cast the dragon and then cast the adventure from the battlefield. You've either got to send it on an adventure and then have it come back from the adventure, or just get the dragon in the first place. But that's how adventures work. So this is pretty nice. It lets us steal 2 cards off the top of an opponent's library. It lets us play them, so that counts lands as well. And we can do that as long as they remain exiled, as opposed to You Find Some Prisoners, which is just until the end of our next turn. So it's like we've drawn these cards and they're sort of in our hand, even though they're in exile, because we always have access to them. Notably, however, Expensive Taste doesn't fix our mana, but Decadent Dragon makes treasures for us. So if we've stolen, a couple of green cards, we can use those treasure tokens to make green mana and cast those spells. So yeah, Expensive Taste is pretty sweet for us, especially since it as well can be myriadized with Zevlor, since all it does is target an opponent. So if we were to do this with Zevlor, we're spending 5 mana to activate Zevlor and then cast Expensive Taste, and we've gotten 6 cards available to us, 2 from each opponent, that we can play for as long as they're exiled. Then we start attacking with our dragon, making treasure tokens, and we're able to cast those spells, even if they're not colors that we would normally be able to cast. Next is Petty Larceny. This is 3 and a black for a sorcery with free running for 1 and a black, because this is an Assassin's Creed card. Free running means we can cast it for 1 and a black if we dealt combat damage to a player this turn with an assassin or a commander. Usually that's not going to happen, because in this deck we don't have any assassins, although we might have stolen one from someone, it's possible. But we do have a commander that we're usually not attacking with. We're usually activating our commander in order to myriadize things like Petty Larceny. So we're usually casting this for 3 and a black. But that's okay, because what it does is essentially Expensive Taste all over again, but better. Look at the top 2 cards of target opponent's library, exile them face down, you can play them as long as they remain exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them. Type. This is perfect mana fixing for us. This is the only thing that's sort of a difference between this and Expensive Taste, other than the cost. But also, it just makes us a treasure token. So if we myriadize this, we're paying 6 mana, 2 for Zevlor and 4 for Petty Larceny, and then we're getting to essentially draw 6 cards into exile for ourselves. Those cards have their mana perfectly fixed, and we get 3 treasures back, 1 for each, of the copies, and 1 for the original Petty Larceny as well. So this is great for us. Next is The Beast, Deathless Prince, there you go, from the Doctor Who set. 2 a black and a red for a 6/6 legendary demon that says when you cast it, gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it, it gains menace and haste until end of turn. So this is on cast, not even when it enters. When we cast the beast, we get to threaten, and it comes with menace. That's great. This is not in the threaten section, because again, it's not a spell that we can myriadize with Zevlor, but it's the same kind of effect, plus menace, so pretty good. And it says the beast enters tapped with 6 stun counters on it. Stun counters, if you haven't seen them, are removed instead of untapping the creature. So if it would become untapped, like during our untap step, instead we take a stun counter off of it. So this is going to be stunned for quite a while. Unless we take advantage of its last ability, which is whenever a creature deals combat damage to its owner, untap the beast and draw a card. So while it has stun counters on it, it means remove a stun counter and draw a card. So pretty sweet. This is a really, really cool effect, because it means if we take our threaten effects and we myriadize them, then we can just send those creatures right back at their controllers, and assuming they do combat damage, every time they do, it's going to draw us a card and get us one step closer to the beast being an untapped 6/6 we can use. So yeah, this is the only thing in the deck, I believe, that actually incentivizes us to send an opponent's creatures back at that opponent. But yeah, normally we want to play it however is best for us in the moment, but drawing extra cards is a pretty nice incentive for that. So yeah. Next up is Mass Mutiny. This is 3 and double red for a sorcery that says for each opponent, gain control of up to 1 target creature that player controls until end of turn, untap those creatures, and they gain haste until end of turn. So this is just straight up threaten for every opponent. It does target a creature per opponent. So technically, I suppose we could say for each opponent, gain control of up to 1 target creature. We could myriadize this if we wanted to, by targeting 0 creatures for each opponent except for 1. And then we'd make copies of it and we'd get to do the same thing for each opponent. But yeah, it's better to just cast it as Mass Mutiny rather than spend the extra 2 mana and just get to steal 1 creature from each opponent anyway. So it's sort of like it's pre-myriadized. So yeah, Mass Mutiny, just a nice additional. It's not something we can myriadize with Zevlor, so it's not in the threaten section, but it might as well be because it's the same kind of thing. Next is Rakdos the Muscle. 2 double black and a red for a 6/5 legendary demon mercenary with flying and trample. So a 5 mana 6/5 Flampler is already okay. That says whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile cards equal to its mana value from the top of target player's library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. So perfect mana fixing, we can play lands, totally sweet. And it gives us the ability to just get those cards off of any player's library, no matter who owned the creature we sacrificed. But how are we sacrificing these creatures? Well, Rakdos just has an ability, free sack outlet. Sack a creature, Rakdos gains indestructible until end of turn, and then we tap it. We can only do this once each turn. But that is still 1 creature that's never going back to our opponents after we threaten. Because we use our threaten effect, we get to attack with Rakdos, because Rakdos is a flying trampler, as well as all of the creatures that we stole through threatening. And then we can do this mid-combat if we want to. If Rakdos is being blocked or is being targeted with something, we just activate this ability. Doesn't matter if Rakdos is already tapped because he's attacking. He will become indestructible, and we will get to do this theft effect right here. Or we just wait until after combat, and if an opponent would be getting one of their creatures back, we just choose the creature that we want least for an opponent to have back. Or if we think of them all the same, we choose the one with the highest mana value, so we get the most value out of Rakdos. And then we sacrifice that, Rakdos becomes indestructible, it's kind of a side effect at this point, and we get to do this theft ability, which is great because, like I mentioned, if we sacrifice a creature that has a high mana value, we don't have to exile cards from the top of the library of the player who we stole that creature from. It could be a different player. So yeah, nice. Next up is Staff of Eden Vault's Key. This is another Assassin's Creed card, a legendary artifact for 6 generic that says when it enters, we put target legendary permanent card, not named Staff of Eden Vault's Key, from a graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. So this is a way to get things back from our graveyard or from any other opponent's graveyard. As long as it isn't a copy of this card and it's legendary, we can get it. So it's a great way for us to steal things from our opponents, attack with them, sacrifice them ourselves, or let them die in combat, and then they're in the graveyard so we can get it back with Staff of Eden. This is a way for us to steal something from the graveyard. However, that's not even the best reason we have it, because we can just tap it and draw a card for each permanent we control but don't own. So if we use one of our threatened effects and we myriadize it, we now control 3 permanents, at least those 3, that we don't own. So before they attack or die in combat, we just tap this and draw 3 cards. So our myriadized threatens now come with a free ancestral recall. That seems pretty sweet. Next up is Arvinox the Mind Flail. This is the in-universe version of, I guess, the Demogorgon from Stranger Things, which is based in D&D, and so Baldur's Gate, you see the connection. This is 4 and triple black for a 9/9 legendary enchantment creature horror that isn't a creature unless you control 3 or more permanents you don't own. Interestingly, whenever you myriadize a threaten, you suddenly control 3 permanents that you don't own. So yeah, assuming of course 3 opponents. So Arvinox might not be a creature most of our turns, or most of our opponent's turns rather, just a legendary enchantment. But as soon as we do one of our threatened tricks, Arvinox is now a 9/9 we can attack with if we wish. But that's not the only way we can get creatures, or rather permanents that we don't own, because Arvinox says at the beginning of our end step we exile the bottom card of each opponent's library face down, and for as long as those cards remain exiled, we can look at them, cast permanent spells from among them, and spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So, we cannot play lands, we can't even cast non-permanent spells, only permanent spells. And it only fixes mana for color, not type, but still pretty nice to draw us essentially 3 cards, 1 for each opponent, at our end step from the bottom of each of those opponents' libraries. And since they're face down, our opponents don't even know what we have. So that is a way, on subsequent turns, to cast cards that are permanents, and eventually get up to the point where we have 3 permanents that we just control, not until end of turn, but just control them. And so Arvinox will be a 9/9 all the time. Sweet. Last in this section is one of our Wraths. This is from Edge of Eternities. It's a Mutinous Massacre. I love this card. It's just fun. 3 double black and double red, so 7 mana, for a sorcery that says choose even or odd and destroy each creature with mana value of the chosen quality, then gain control of all creatures until end of turn, untap them, and they gain haste until end of turn. So this isn't in our threaten section, but it's threatening every creature on the battlefield after getting rid of half of them. So what we do is, if we want to keep Zevlor around, which we probably do, we just choose odd. Blow up every odd creature, steal all the rest of them, and then attack with them all. So we can usually destroy at least one opponent this way. If it looks like we look at the battlefield and it's worth it to lose our commander, just because there's so many great creatures that are all odd mana value, then we just choose even. And we lose our commander, he'll go back to the command zone, we'll recast him in a minute, no big deal. And we let Mutinous Massacre let us kill whoever the biggest threat was, or biggest threats. We might be able to kill multiple opponents this way. Since, again, like we saw with an earlier card, there are no blockers anymore, because all the creatures in play we control. So unless someone plans to flash in a blocker, or otherwise use something that stops us, like a Maze of Ith type effect, we're getting in. So yeah, that's Mutinous Massacre. Really cool. And that covers our theft section. We have one more section that I think of in terms of it being sort of central to our game plan, and that is our assistance section. These are all cards that help us with Zevlor. So Omen Hawker is a single blue for a 1/1 Octopus Advisor that if we tap it, it makes a colorless mana, specifically colorless, and a blue that we can only spend to activate abilities. So Omen Hawker taps for 2, Zevlor taps when we pay 2 into it. So essentially, Omen Hawker is there for us to tap it with Zevlor in order to pay for Zevlor so that we can myriadize something. That's the only reason it's in the deck, and it's a pretty solid one. We also have the Enigma Jewel for a similar reason. This is a single blue for a legendary artifact that comes in tapped, and taps for 2 colorless mana we can only spend to activate abilities. So that's what it's in this deck for. I will read you the rest of the card. It's not that relevant in this deck, but there you go. We can craft with 4 or more non-lands with activated abilities for 8 and a blue. That's a huge cost. So for 8 and a blue, we exile the Enigma Jewel and 4 or more other permanents that we control and or cards in our graveyard that have activated abilities. And when we do that, we bring it back transformed as Locus of Enlightenment, a legendary artifact that has all the activated abilities of the exiled cards we use to craft it, and we can activate each of those abilities only once each turn. And whenever we activate an ability that isn't a mana ability, we copy it, and we can choose new targets for the copy. So that's pretty enticing with Zevlor. But the likelihood of us being able to craft Locus of Enlightenment is pretty low. It's not really what it's in the deck for. It's in here to be a 1 mana rock that we can tap for 2 mana for Zevlor. So this is for a single blue, we get a tapped Soul Ring for Zevlor, essentially. Not a terrible use for it. If we can get this to go off, great. And maybe we can. Maybe at some point, we're going to be able to cast a Myriadized Threaten and still have 9 mana left over after having stolen 3 creatures with activated abilities and then getting rid of the Enigma Jewel, all 3 of those, and something else of ours, maybe our Omen Hawker, in order to make this into Locus of Enlightenment. It's a possibility. You never know. Next up, we've seen Sibling Rivalry. It makes us a Power Stone, so that helps assist with Zevlor. Visions of Phyrexia can also make us Power Stones. This is 2 and double red for an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Play means we can play lands that we exiled as our land drop. We can also cast spells. So this is sort of a red version of Phyrexian Arena, if you want to think of it that way. It doesn't cost us a life, but it is in exile, so it's face up, and we've got to cast it this turn, but it's an option for us. And at the beginning of our end step, if we didn't play a card from exile this turn, it doesn't say this card, just any card from exile. It could be from our Decadent Dragons adventure if we wanted to. Those cards go to exile. It doesn't say a card you own from exile. So if we didn't do that, we make a tapped Power Stone token. So essentially, at the very minimum, this is kind of drawing us a card that if we don't use it by the end of the turn, we get a tapped Power Stone. So that's going to sit around and untap for us next turn, so we can put that mana toward our commander's ability. And if we have something already that we can put toward that commander's ability, then we start using these spells or playing these lands, whatever it may be. Yeah. Finally, we have the Might Stone and Weak Stone. This is 5 generic mana for a legendary Power Stone that makes Power Stone mana. It taps for 2 colorless mana that can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells. So everything we said about Power Stones already, true here too, but it's 5 mana and it taps for 2, which is exactly what we need to turn on Zevlor's ability. And when it enters, we can either draw 2 cards or give target creature -5/-5 until end of turn. So it's a removal effect or a draw effect. We're usually using it for the cards, and then it sticks around and powers Zevlor. Great. And that covers all of the cards in our, like the core of our game plan. Oh, hey, did you just like the video? Nice, thanks so much. I'm just kidding, you don't have to like the video if you don't want to. I appreciate you being here either way. Thanks for joining me. So there's more where that came from. We're gonna go now to these sections of support, starting with our card advantage section, which as usual I've just tagged as draw. It doesn't mean all these cards do the draw a card action, it just gives us access to more cards. For example, we've seen Jet's Brainwashing. It's in this section because it makes us a clue token. Or if we myriadized it, 3 clue tokens, or I guess a number equal to the number of opponents we have. Leadership Vacuum is next. This is 2 and a blue for an instant that says target player returns each commander they control from the battlefield to the command zone, draw a card. So this card is sweet. If we myriadize this, which we can because it's target player, we basically say, hey, everyone at the table, bounce your commander, or commanders if they have multiple commanders and they have multiple, and both of those commanders are out. This is a kill spell that sends those creatures back to the command zone, so it adds to the commander attacks. And for each of the creatures that we did this with, or rather for each leadership vacuum we used. So if we didn't myriadize it, we're just going to draw one card. But if we did, we're going to draw a card for each opponent that we affected with this. So this can essentially be a 3-mana draw 3 at instant speed, get rid of the commanders in play that aren't ours. Cool. Next is Tablet of Discovery from the recent Secrets of Strixhaven set. This is 2 and a red for an artifact that when it enters, we mill a card, but we can play that card this turn. So essentially, it's like when it enters, draw a card that you will have to discard at the end of turn. Or exile a card, and if you don't play it this turn, at the end of your turn, put it in your graveyard. You know, all that works sort of similarly. This is essentially giving us access to this card, and that's pretty good. Because it taps for red, or it taps for double red if we're using that mana on instants and sorceries. Great. If we could use this on our commander, activating our commander, that would be even better. And we can for just the single red, but usually making this a 3-mana rock that taps for 2 for most of our spells in the deck, that seems pretty great. Plus, comes with a card we get to use. Thanks, Lorehold. Next is Archmage Emeritus. I don't usually run this guy even in my Spellslinger decks, but in this deck just works great. So this is a 2/2 human wizard for 2 and double blue with a Magecraft ability. Magecraft triggers whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, and when we do, the Emeritus draws us a card. So if we cast a threaten effect and we have myriadized it with Zevlor, that means we're going to get our original spell. It's going to get cast, so the Archmage is going to draw us a card. And when Zevlor's ability's trigger goes off, it's going to make extra copies of it. 2 extra copies if we have three total opponents. So we've copied a spell twice. So we're going to draw 2 more cards. So Archmage Emeritus is saying whenever you myriadize something, if you've got 3 opponents, you're drawing 3 cards. So the fact that's the reason I don't put this in most decks. A form like taking off turn 4 in order to get an extra card every turn is not usually bad, but to get an extra 3 cards every turn, this is crazy powerful. So yeah, even if your pod thinks that you're making 2 copies, so you're only copying once, which is not true, and that would be you drawing 2 cards every time you did this, that would still be pretty sweet. But yeah, Archmage Emeritus drawing 3 extra cards every time you cast something that you have myriadized, very, very powerful. Next, we've seen the Beast. The Beast draws us cards whenever a creature deals combat damage to its owner. Notably, it doesn't say a creature that we control deals combat damage to its owner, so if some other players are doing some kind of funky stuff, we might also get to untap the Beast and draw a card there too. Visions of Phyrexia doesn't draw us cards, but it does exile the top card of our library during our upkeep and gives us access to it this turn. Nice. Next, we have Voracious Bibliophile. This is 3 and a blue for a 3/3 dragon with flying and vigilance. 3/3 flyer with vigilance for 4 is pretty good. It also says whenever you cast a spell with 1 or more targets, draw that many cards. So we are almost always casting spells that target only one thing. Even though we're getting copies that will target other things, those copies are created on the stack. They are not cast, so they will not trigger the Bibliophile. But the original spell will. So essentially, in our deck, with all of our, and this is true in, of spells that are not just instant sorceries. Like for example, but we just think of our instant sorceries about it. Every one of our instants and sorceries is now a cantrip, because we're targeting one thing and we're drawing 1 card. Every one of our instants and sorceries replaces itself with Voracious Bibliophile in play. This is going to draw us an awful lot of cards. We've seen the Mightstone and Weakstone. It enters, we can either give something -5/-5, or draw 2 cards. We've got enough removal in this deck. We're usually drawing the cards. We've also seen Staff of Eden. Lets us tap it to draw a card for each permanent we control but don't own. That can be quite a few cards, at the very least. If we just do one of our myriadized threatens, it draws us 3. Pretty good. But we also have Professor Onyx. She's our only Planeswalker in this deck. This is 4 and double black for a 5 loyalty Liliana Planeswalker. She's incognito. with a Magecraft ability of her own. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, each opponent loses 2 and we gain 2. So if we myriadize a threaten, we've cast a spell and we've made 2 copies of it. So each opponent's going to lose a total of 6 and we're going to gain a total of 6. And that's just Professor Onyx's baseline, her static ability. We can +1 her to lose a life, and then look at the top 3 of our library, put 1 in our hand and the rest in our graveyard. So a little bit of card selection, costs us a life, but draws us a card. Great. And then, -3, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. Pretty good removal effect. And if our opponents are crazy enough to let us get Professor Onyx up to 8 loyalty, we can -8 her, and each opponent may discard a card. If they don't, they lose 3 life, and then we do that 6 more times. Each opponent is going to have to discard 7 cards, and for each card fewer than that they discard, they lose 3 life. So that might be 21 life that they lose if they didn't have any cards that they discarded. Cool. That's Professor Onyx. And that is our card advantage section. Let's go now to our acceleration. These, as usual, I've tagged as ramp. We've got a little bit more in this deck than we normally do because we want to be able to spend 2 extra mana every turn when we're casting our instants and sorceries to activate Zevlor and myriadize things. Of course, we're running Sol Ring, especially in this deck. A single generic for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. Great. Symbol of the format for a reason, put it in your decks. Wayfarer's Bauble is next because we're not in green. A single generic mana for an artifact that if we pay 2, tap, and sack it, we get to Rampant Growth. Search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. This can find whatever color we're most in need of, and if we've got all our colors, it'll find us a mountain, because that's our most common color. So yeah, Wayfarer's Bauble, I really like this. I think it is well played in Commander, and I would be surprised if the math doesn't show that it's still underplayed. Next is Arcane Signet, another almost auto-include, 2 generic for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, so blue, black, or red in this deck. It's an untapped rock for 2 mana that makes all of our colors. Of course we're running this. We've also got Felwar Stone, which is a 2 mana untapped rock that taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So this is sweet. If any opponent is running black, this is an untapped black source. If some other opponent's running blue, it makes black or blue. Maybe it makes all of our colors. Felwar Stone is great for us. Even if all it makes is white or green, it at least pays for our generic costs, and we've got plenty of those too. So yeah, great. Next, we have all 3 talismans in our colors. We use the creativity one to illustrate. These are all 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for colorless, or taps for one of 2 other colors, if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. Which, as I like to often say, we always are. Because with the way these talismans work, the way you need to think of this, is if you don't need colored mana, just tap this for colorless, it's fine. And if you do need the colored mana, the only reason you would need that mana is if it's the difference between you casting a spell or not. Which is the same thing as saying, would you pay an extra life to cast an extra spell? I would. I would do it over and over, because every life that it costs me is 1 more spell I've put on the stack, and the more spells you cast, the likelier you are to win a game. So it's worth the damage. Obviously, you can die from this, but the likelihood that you will is lower every time you do it, paradoxically, because it gets you closer to having cast a bunch of spells, hopefully that were useful to you. And again, if you didn't need the colored mana, just tap it for colorless and you're fine. True for all 3 of these, they just are different pairs of colors. Next, we have Depths of Desire. This is 2 and a blue for an instant that bounces target creature to its owner's hand and makes a treasure. Great. The reason we've got this in our deck is because it's just an unsummon at instant speed, but if we myriadize it, which we don't normally do in this deck at instant speed, but we can, if we myriadize it, we're bouncing a creature off of each opponent's playmat and making a treasure for each one we did. So if we've got 3 opponents, we get a refund of 3 mana in the form of 3 treasures from Depths of Desire. So on an opponent's turn, we're down 2 mana because we paid 2 to myriadize, and then paid the 3, but we got our 3 right back and bounced 3 creatures. Tempoing our opponents, getting something out of the way that we don't necessarily want to steal from them with one of our threatened effects because it's just a value creature that's not powerful in combat. Yeah, just useful to us. We've seen Furnace Rains. Furnace Rains can make us treasures if the creature or creatures, assuming we myriadized it, that we stole do combat damage to a player or a battle. Tablet of Discovery can tap for red or double red if we use that mana for instants and sorceries. Next we have Ashling Flame Dancer. This is 2 and double red for a 4/4 legendary elemental shaman that says you don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. Which means if we don't think Ashling's going away and we've got unspent red mana or untapped red mana sources, we just tap them for red before our opponent to the right's end step, or before their turn is over, and then pass to our turn and we get to keep that red mana in our pool. We'll start our turn with it. Great. But we've got Ashling in this section for a different reason. Ashling has Magecraft. Love Magecraft in this deck, because when we myriadize something, we're almost guaranteed to get a single casting and 2 copies, so triple Magecraft, as we've seen already. Ashling says whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, discard a card, then draw a card. Just a nice little rummage, that's fine. What's especially nice about this version is it doesn't say you may discard a card if you do draw a card. It just says discard and then draw, which means if we had 0 cards in hand, we discard, nothing, and then we draw, so we're now up a card. So it could give us a little card advantage. I don't have it in that section, simply because the discard is there first, so we're normally going to be card neutral, but you never know. We might be able to get into a position where it does draw us a card without us having to lose something. And even if not, that selection is pretty good. And it says, if this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, Ashling deals 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. It does not say instead. So we would discard and then draw. And then the second time we discard and draw, and Ashling pyroclasms each opponent's board, plus does 2 damage to each opponent. And if it's the third time, we add quadruple red. So that means if we myriadize a threaten, for example, then we're getting to cast a spell and we're copying that spell twice. So we're going to get to discard and draw 3 times, do 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control, since that's the second time, and add quad red, since we will have done it the third time as well. We don't get to do the 2 damage twice, because that doesn't work every time beyond the first, it's only the second time. But this is a little board wipe, plus a little bit of burn, plus we get some mana off of it, and we've got some card selection. Ashling is great. And if we don't use that red mana, well, we don't lose it as steps and phases end. Great. Next up we have Cormella Glamour Thief, another Streets of New Capenna card. This is 1, a blue, a black, and a red for a 2/4 legendary vampire rogue with haste. That if we pay 1 mana into her, we can tap her to make a blue, black, and a red that we can only use on instants and sorceries. So Cormella filters a single mana into 3 mana. We can't use that to activate our commander, but we can at least use that to cast spells, and most of our threatens, or many of our threatens, are a red and 2, so that's turn 1 mana into a threaten. Pretty nice for us. In addition, when Cormella dies, we return up to 1 target instant or sorcery from our graveyard to our hand, so we get a little bit of recursion here. Just regrow an instant or sorcery. That's pretty good. We've seen our Decadent Dragon. Decadent Dragon can make us treasures whenever it attacks. It doesn't even have to connect to do so. Involuntary Employment makes us a treasure when we cast it. Petty Larceny makes us a treasure as well. Traitorous Greed adds 2 mana to our pool when it resolves, of course. And we also have Stormkill and Artist. I think this is our last Magecraft creature. This is 3 and a red for a 2/2 Dwarf Shaman that gets +1/+0 for each artifact we control, and whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, we make a treasure, which notably is an artifact, so its power gets bigger, but every time we myriadize one of our instants and sorceries, we're making 3 treasures, so we're getting that huge rebate again every time. Great. That covers our acceleration section. Let's go now to our interaction section, which as usual I've just tagged as removal. So our deck is primarily red, so we're running Lightning Bolt. Single red for an instant that does 3 damage to any target. This is a burn spell, this is a removal spell, this is a spell that you can myriadize. So you're doing 2 mana, tap your commander, pay a red, and a Lightning Bolt is going to hit each player or a creature on each playmat. Terrific. Just, Lightning Bolt is so powerful, And even though it's only 3 mana, it's also only, 3 damage, it's also only 1 mana, and it's instant speed. This can kill stuff. This wins games, even to today. Thanks, Richard Garfield, for designing this in alpha. Next, we have Feed the Swarm. And you don't have to run this Secrets of Strixhaven Mystical Archive printing, but I like it because it's beautiful, and it features Grist, one of my favorite planeswalkers on it. This is 1 and a black for a sorcery that destroys a creature or enchantment an opponent controls, and we lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. So this part, it's fine losing the life. Sometimes you just gotta kill something, and it lets us hit enchantments in this deck. We can myriadize this. We don't usually want to, simply because, we lose the life for each of the 3 things we would be killing. But if it's worth it, then it's worth it. So yeah, maybe we're destroying a token that has a mana value of nothing. Maybe we're destroying something that's only mana value 3, and it's worth it to us to do that. Because 1 and a black and lose 3 life is, I won't remember the name of the spell, but 1 and a black to destroy a creature or planeswalker. You also have to either discard a card or pay 3 life. That's a pretty solid removal spell. Feed the Swarm can hit enchantments, so that's why it's in our deck. Goblin Bombardment is next. This is 1 and a red for an enchantment that says sacrifice a creature, and it deals 1 damage to any target. So this is a free, unlimited times per turn sack outlet. At the very least, we can threaten an opponent, myriadize it, steal 3 creatures, attack with them, and any of them that live aren't going to live past the end of our turn because we will sack them and just do damage to wherever we need to send that damage. To an opponent, to a creature that may be blocked and has damage marked on it already and needs to be pushed to the brink of death. Goblin Bombardment is the most obvious sack outlet in our deck, and the most obvious way that we are a red X sacrifice deck. We don't usually do that in this deck. That's really, we're trying to just do the threatens, but a combination of stealing someone's creature and then using a sack outlet to just kill it after we use it for combat is a pretty common and classic play pattern, so we had to use something to do that. We've seen you find some prisoners, it can blow up artifacts. Blot Out is 2 and a black for an instant that says target opponent exiles a creature or planeswalker they control with the greatest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Very cool, gets rid of the biggest scary, or maybe not the scariest, but at least the most expensive things that our opponents have, and it won't hit tokens unless those tokens are copies of something and thereby have a mana value greater than 0. There is, I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there is a 2 mana version of this from Secrets of Strixhaven that works at sorcery speed. So I chose Blot Out because it gives us access to more instants when we are mostly running sorceries in this deck. We don't have as many instants. I just wanted to do the instant version of this because that gives us a little more flexibility with it and can give us a couple of other nice little tricks we can do instant-wise. And we'll see one of those a little later. Next up is Cornered by Black Mages. This is a sorcery, 1 and double black for a sorcery that says target opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice. Doesn't have to be the highest mana value, it could be a token, whatever it may be. But then we create a 0/1 Black Wizard creature token with, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this token deals 1 damage to each opponent. So these are Black Mage tokens, since this is a Final Fantasy card. And this triggers on non-creature spells. Well, we've only got 18 creatures in this deck, including our commander, so this is most of the spells in our deck, especially all of our threaten effects. This doesn't trigger on copying, just casting, but that's still 1 damage to each opponent. And notably, Cornered by Black Mages can be myriadized because it only targets a single opponent. So we activate Zevlor, cast Cornered by Black Mages on opponent A, we get a copy for opponents B and C. All of those are going to resolve, every opponent's going to have to sacrifice a creature, and we're going to end up with 3 of these Black Mages, so that every time we cast a non-creature, all of them will trigger, and each do a damage to each opponent, so that's us giving a free lightning bolt to each opponent every time we cast a non-creature spell. Great. Next up, we've seen Depths of Desire, bounces some creatures, or at least 1 creature, if we myriadize it, more than 1. Next we have Kazul's Fury. This is 2 and a red for an instant with an additional cost of sacrificing a creature, and it does damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. any target, but only one target, so we can myriadize this. Sacrifice one big creature. Kazul's Fury, if it's myriadized, we're going to be able to do that damage to either 3 different targets. We're going to do that damage to a target on each playmat or to each opponent. Great. What's also nice about Kazul's Fury is that it is an expensive version of Fling. It's Fling, but it costs 1 more. And the reason for that is because it is a modal double-faced card. When this is in our hand, if we want, we don't have to cast it as a spell. We can play it as our land drop. And it's a tap land that taps for red called Kazul's Cliffs. Neat. Nice to have a little bit of flexibility here. Next, we've seen Leadership Vacuum. Bounces all the commanders other than ours back to the command zone and draws us a card. It does all of them if we myriadize it. Just one player is going to have to do that, and we draw 1 card for 3, and that's still pretty good. But if we myriadize it for 2 more, we're also drawing 2 more cards and getting 2 more commanders off the battlefield, or maybe more if our opponents are running multiple commanders and they have them out already. Next is Rush of Dread. This is from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and it is a spree card, meaning it costs 1 and double black and is a sorcery, but we have to pay at least 1 of these additional costs, but we can pay only 1, we can pay any 2, or we can do all 3 if we want to do all that mana. If we were to do all 3, it would be 6 and double black total, which is 8 mana. So if we're myriadizing it, that's not even going to happen, because if we're choosing multiple modes, we're having to target different opponents. Unless we target the same opponent with each mode. Let's pretend that we have 10 mana, and 2 of it is black. We can activate our commander, then cast Rush of Dread, spree for all of these. Target opponent sacrifices half the creatures they control of their choice, rounded up. Target opponent discards half the cards in their hand, rounded up, and target opponent loses half their life, rounded up. As long as this target for all 3 of these modes is the same opponent, we have cast a spell that only targets a single opponent. It doesn't matter how many times we've targeted them, it matters how many opponents we've targeted. And if we target the same opponent with each of our modes, no matter how many modes there are, then the Rush of Dread still only has 1 opponent, or 1 target rather, which means it can be myriadized, and so all of our opponents will have to lose half their life, discard half their cards, and sack half their creatures. Normally, what I would do with this is only pay 8 mana for it. 3, 1 more for the top mode for 4, 2 more for the last mode for 6, and then 2, of course, for our commander to have Zevlor myriadize this beforehand. Because I don't really usually care about making my opponents discard cards, just not a thing that I like to do in Commander. It doesn't seem as much fun. But make everyone sack half their creatures and make everyone lose half their life? Yes, please. For 8 mana, I think that's worth it. Great. Next up, Grab the Reins. We've already seen it. It lets us sack a creature to do damage equal to that creature's power to target creature or player, which is to say to any target. So we can use that for removal. Enthrall to the Pit lets us steal something, and if we kicked it, we also sack that thing we stole at the beginning of the next end step, so that's good removal. Press the Enemy is next. This is 2 and double blue for an instant that returns a spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Notably, that's any non-land permanent or a spell. So we can actually protect ourselves with this by essentially reprieving it, bouncing it off the stack back to its owner's hand. And if they don't have the mana to cast it again this turn, well, they just gotta wait. But if we were to target a non-land permanent with it, then we can myriadize this with Zevlor. Neat. But that's not all it does. It says we may then cast an instant or sorcery spell with equal or lesser mana value from our hand without paying its mana cost. So this lets us, at instant speed, bounce a thing that an opponent has, or we can myriadize it and bounce something that each opponent has, and each copy and the original will let us cast an instant or sorcery from our hand as well. So let's say we had 3 mana threatens in our hand. We myriadize, press the Enemy, we bounce a non-land permanent on each opponent's playmat, and each time we do, press the Enemy lets us threaten. Because we have those 3 threatens in our hand. As long as what we bounced had at least as much mana value as what we're casting, we get to cast those spells in our hand for free. So for 4 mana plus 2 to myriadize it, we're essentially casting 4 spells sometimes. Pretty great. Pretty great. Next is This Is How It Ends from Doctor Who. 3 and a black for an instant that says target creature's owner shuffles it into their library. So that's already really good removal, and then faces a villainous choice. They get to either lose 5 life or shuffle another creature they own into their library. So they're either losing the creature we choose and 5 life, or they're losing the creature we choose and some other creature of theirs. Now, that might be worth it to them, or they might want to really keep their creatures, especially since we've stolen so many and attacked with them. And so they're willing to take 5 burn damage from that. So this is great. And because all it does is target a single creature, it does not target the second creature, because that's a creature that they get to choose, then yeah, we're able to myriadize this. So this might be 6 mana, activating Zevlor and then 3 and a black, to adios a creature off of every playmat and cost each opponent 5 life, or adios an additional creature. Great. We've seen the Mightstone and Weakstone. It can give a creature -5/-5 until end of turn when it enters, and Professor Onyx can be -3'd to make each opponent sack a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. Cool. We are running 2 Wraths. We've already seen them both. Ashling, when we get our second Magecraft triggers Resolution during the turn, does 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control, so that's Pyroclasm. And Pyroclasm, of course, plus Shock to the opponent. And then Mutinous Massacre lets us destroy half of the creatures in the battlefield and steal all the rest of them. So yeah, this can win the game for us. And those are our Wraths. And that covers our support sections. Let's go into our supplemental categories now. We're going to begin with our Payoffs. These are all cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway. So, Third Path Iconoclast is a blue and a red for a 2/1 human monk that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, make a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. So this is a young pyromancer for us. Costs blue and a red rather than just 1 and a red, but it makes artifact creatures, and it triggers on non-creature spells. So it helps us in lots of ways in this deck, gives us a lot of 1/1s that at the very least can chump block for us and protect us with our low creature count. Or not that low, but lower. Cornered by Black Mages, triggers, it itself does not trigger on things, but the 0/1 wizards that it makes trigger on any non-creature spell and burn each opponent for 1 when we cast those. Next, we have a weird one from the most recent Marvel Superheroes Commander product. I think this might be from the actual Commander deck, now that I'm thinking about it. Otherwise, it's from the Jumpstart product. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 legendary human scientist hero that says the legend rule doesn't apply to creatures you control. So we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Pretty neat. And it says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've cast a non-creature spell this turn, create a token that's a copy of Council of Reeds. Which means, if we have this in play and we cast a Threaten, or whatever we may cast that's not a creature spell, we go to combat, we get a second Council of Reeds. They are both legendary, but the legend rule doesn't apply to creatures we control. Then the next turn, let's say we cast a non-creature spell prior to combat. We go to combat, and both the original and the copy both make a copy. Now we have 4 Council of Reeds. This is sort of like Homunculus Horde, or in a different way, I guess. It's not really like Scoot Swarm. It feels a little like Scoot Swarm, but it really plays more like Homunculus Horde, which is a 4 mana blue 2/2 that makes a copy of itself every time you draw your second card every turn. So yeah, Council of Reeds is a little bit cheaper. It has a cool effect with its legend rule thing. It just seemed neat. So yeah, we got this. Sedgemoor Witch is another Magecraft creature, so we didn't see our last one. This is a 3/2 human warlock for 2 and a black with Menace and Ward pay 3 life, and Magecraft. When we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, we make a 1/1 black and green pest creature token that says when it dies, we gain a life. So every time we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, we're getting pesties. If we cast a Threaten, with 3 opponents, and we've myriadized it, we get 3 pests. So this is making sort of as many 1/1s as our Third Path Iconoclast is. Oftentimes it's making more, sometimes it's making less. This will trigger on any non-creature spell. This is only on instants and sorceries, but this also triggers extra times when we copy something, which we're doing a lot of with our deck. So usually the Witch is giving us a little bit more value, especially since those pesties gain us life when they die. But yeah, both are solid inclusions in this deck. Next is Veyran, Voice of Duality. This card is so powerful here. 1, a blue and a red, gives us a 2/2 legendary Efreet Wizard with another Magecraft ability. When we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, Veyran gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This is not relevant to this deck, because if casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability of a permanent we control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. This is awesome. So let's start with the simplest thing. Let's say we cast or copy an instant or sorcery. Veyran's going to get +2/+2 because this ability is going to trigger twice. Triggers an additional time. We cast an instant. Veyran has Third Path Iconoclast, trigger twice. We get 2 soldiers. Sedgemoor Witch triggers twice. We get 2 pests. Cornered by Black Mages. These Black Wizards are going to see that instant that we cast, and they're each going to trigger twice, doing 2 damage to each opponent. Archmage Emeritus is going to trigger twice, drawing us 2 cards. But most importantly, let's take a look at this. Zevlor. This is an activated ability that sets up a delayed trigger. When we next cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single opponent or a single permanent opponent controls, does that trigger twice? Take a look. Of a permanent you control. So no, because that's not Zevlor's ability. That is Zevlor has a triggered an activated ability that sets up a delayed trigger. So that's not going to trigger twice. But we have so many other things that do trigger twice. Veyran just helps us out so much in this deck. So yeah. Now, what if it triggers twice because we're casting an instant or sorcery and then copying it thanks to Zevlor's ability? Well, let's say we have a threaten effect. We've myriadized it, so it's getting cast once, and it's getting copied twice. So that would trigger this Magecraft ability 3 times. But because of this, it's going to trigger it 6 times. So Veyran is now an 8/8 if we myriadized one of our instants and sorceries. 6 triggers. So Sedgemoor Witch is going to make 6 pests. Archmage Emeritus is going to draw us 6 cards. This is just our Mage Crafters. So yeah, just very powerful stuff here. Third Path Iconoclast will only just trigger twice because it's 2 castings, but still, Veyran gives us quite a lot of value in here. And gets a little bit big. We've seen Ashling. Ashling has Magecraft as well. So with Veyran in play, Ashling's going to, and if we myriadize something, Ashling's going to trigger 6 times, which is still only going to just do 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control once and make quadruple red for us once, but it will let us discard and draw 6 times. So yeah, and the Archmages we've already discussed will draw us cards, cares about casting, copying instants and sorceries. Next we have Hermes, Overseer of Elpis. This is a Final Fantasy Commander card. I am not a Final Fantasy guy, so let me know in the comments if you know who this guy is and what his deal is with birds. Because for 3 and a blue, we get a 2/4 legendary Elder Wizard that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, make a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying and vigilance. And whenever you attack with 1 or more birds, scry 2. So I chose this rather than Talrand Sky Summoner or some other 4-mana blue make a flyer when you cast an instant or sorcery or a non-creature spells for a couple of reasons. Hermes triggers on all non-creature spells, not just instants or sorceries. Hermes does make 1/1s rather than 2/2s that fly, but they have vigilance as well. And in this deck, we do have a bunch of repeatable card advantage, but we want to make sure we can find the spells that we need. So being able to attack with any number of birds and get a scry off of that is pretty powerful, especially since those birds have vigilance, and so if they're not blocked, we're going to get to keep them. Yeah. We've seen the Stormkiln Artist, another Magecraft effect. Imagine with Veyron in play, if we Myriadize an instant or sorcery, we're going to make 6 treasures. Crazy. The Beast triggers whenever we have a creature do combat damage to its owner, which happens a lot more in this deck than it seems like it would, so that fits right here. Voracious Bibliophile, every time we cast a spell with 1 or more targets, which is most of our instants and sorceries, we're going to draw that many cards. Professor Onyx also has Magecraft. With Veyron in play, as long as we Myriadize an instant or sorcery, each opponent is losing 12 life, and we're gaining 12, because this is going to trigger 6 times. And Dika, Fractal Theorist, 1 more Magecrafter. 4 and a blue for a 3/3 legendary human wizard with Magecraft. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, we make a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token and put a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to that spell's mana value. So, if we Myriadize a 3 mana threaten effect, we're going to get 3 3/3 fractals. 1 for the casting, 1 for each copy. Assuming, of course, that we have 3 total opponents. So Dika can give us quite a few of these fractals, and those fractals get bigger the bigger the mana value of our spell is. Dika does cost 2 more mana than our Sedgemoor Witch, and doesn't have Ward, but is here to do a similar job with the Sedgemoor Witch being a little cheaper and giving us those pests. Dika also says, for 3 and a blue, target creature token can't be blocked this turn. So if we really need to, if we've stolen a token from someone with our threatened effects, or if we just want to use these fractals, we can dump some mana into Dika, and any number of our tokens that we can pay for aren't going to be blocked. And sometimes that can just end the game. You never know. And that covers our payoff section. We do have some synergy cards. We've seen both of them already. I like to use synergy to represent cards that care about the things we're doing rather than rewarding us for it necessarily. So Staff of Eden counts the number of cards, a number of permanents we control that we don't own. We get to draw cards for that. Arvinox counts the number of permanents we control that we don't own as well, but only really cares about us getting up to 3 so that it can be a creature again. That's our synergy section. Let's go now to our outlets. These are all cards that we can use to sacrifice the stuff that we have, usually creatures that we've stolen, just because it's a fun ability to do so. Goblin Bombardment lets us sacrifice anything unlimitedly to do 1 damage to any target. Rakdos the Muscle lets us sacrifice once per turn another creature in order to make Rakdos indestructible and tap it. So good ways to do the classic red X, steal your stuff and sacrifice it ability. Kazul's Fury and Grab the Reins, on the other hand, are both fling effects that let us do damage to any target by sacrificing a creature that we control and doing damage equal to that creature's power. So that is our outlets section. We also have some burn. These are all cards that we are able to use to do direct damage to an opponent. So we have Lightning Bolt, of course, it can hit any target, as can Goblin Bombardment, as can Kazul's Fury and Grab the Reins with those its fling effects. Cornered by Black Mages makes those 0/1 Black Wizards that do 1 damage to each opponent when we cast non-creature spells. Rush of Dread can cost an opponent half their life, rounded up. Ashling's second resolution of her Magecraft ability pyroclasms each opponent's creatures, but also shocks each opponent. This is how it ends. If each opponent chooses that villainous choice to lose 5 life, then it's going to cost them 5 life, so that's a little bit of burn. And Professor Onyx costs each opponent 2 life every time we cast or copy an instant or sorcery, and we even gain a little life off of that ourselves. And that is our burn section. Next up, we have a little bit of protection in this deck, just in the sense that Besmirch lets us goad the creatures that we threaten, which means after we're done with them, if they've survived our turn and the attacks we're going to make with them, they're not going to be coming at us for the next turn cycle unless we're the only opponent left, the only player left in play besides the controller of those creatures or that creature. So yeah, Besmirch protects us from those creatures attacking. As for Press the Enemy, I like to put counterspells in the protection section, even though sometimes they are worth thinking of as interaction, as removal. Press the Enemy is removal because it can bounce non-land permanents, but also can bounce spells. And even if that just tempos our opponent back and they just recast that spell right away or the next turn, it at least has protected us from some kind of interactive spell of our opponent's own, at least for a small amount of time. So that's why I consider that kind of thing protection. We also have a little bit of a pump section, both in two different ways. Malevolent Whispers and Mascot Interception are both threaten effects that give +2/+0 to the creature that we steal, and so if we myriadize them, it's each creature we steal with them getting +2/+0. That's pretty good. And that's our pump section. We have a little bit of recursion in this deck, in the form of these cards. Cormella, when she dies, returns an instant sorcery from our graveyard to our hand. Staff of Eden can bring back a legendary permanent from the graveyard to the battlefield, which could be from our graveyard to the battlefield, so that's a little recursive. But we're also running Lear, Disciple of the Drowned, 3 and double blue, good grief, for a 3/4 legendary human wizard that makes all of our spells uncounterable and gives each instant and sorcery in our graveyard flashback equal to its mana cost. So this card is so strong in our deck. It doubles the number of instants and sorceries we have because we cast them once, then we can cast them again from the graveyard. It's like they're still in our hand. It's not even once per turn. So Lear sits around and just lets us do our threatens again, do our removal effects again, do any kind of other things that we have, like a draw effect if we may have that, like Leadership Vacuum, again. Lear is great and gives us even more of our triggers from all of our payoffs for casting these spells. Yeah, really helps us here and makes our spells uncounterable. Sounds great. That is our recursion section. I just want to go over our tokens. I like to do this in most of my decks. If I have things that make tokens, I want to group them all together. So Third Path Iconoclast makes us 1/1 soldiers when we cast non-creature spells. Cornered by Black Mages, when it resolves, makes us a black wizard that will ping our opponents when we cast non-creatures. Council of Reeds gives us a token copy of itself at the start of combat on our turn if we've cast a non-creature spell that turn. Sedgemoor Witch and Dika both have Magecraft make tokens, either 1/1 pests or 0/0 fractals with a number of counters on them equal to the mana value of the spell that we cast or copied. And Hermes makes us 1/1 flying vigilant birds whenever we cast non-creature spells. Sweet. And that covers our token section and all the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basics. We are running, of course, these Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate arts with the cool flavor text. Yeah, but we're mostly red. We're almost exactly the same blue and black, but this is the balance that I chose, and it works out pretty well for us. We could probably cut an island and add another mountain, and that would be just as good. But yeah, 14 basics is what we're doing here. We've got all 3 bicycle lands in our colors. We'll use Coastal Peak as an example. This is a tap land that is an island and a mountain, so it inherently taps for blue or red. Great. This is just a tap land that makes 2 of our colors, but we can also cycle it for 2 generic, meaning if it's in our hand, we can pay 2 and discard it to draw a card. Something we might do if we're desperate for card draw early in the game, or more likely, if it's late game, we draw this, and we just don't need any more lands. So we cycle it away, find ourselves another card. Great. So we've got all 3 combinations of colors for our bicycle lands, and that's pretty good. If you were to want to upgrade these, I would suggest a shock land. They're typed duels that don't necessarily have to come in tapped. Yes, they can't be cycled, but pretty good, but also much more expensive, so that's your option. We're running all 3 check lands as well. We'll use Sulphur Falls as our example. Sulphur Falls taps for blue or red and comes in tapped unless we control an island or a mountain. So I know you're thinking, well, we don't really have that many islands and mountains here. It's 10 in the deck. Yeah, but it doesn't say a basic island or mountain. So Canyon Slough is a mountain. Coastal Peak is an island and a mountain. Fetid Pools is an island. We actually have all of our bicycle lands that will count for any of our check lands, as well as 9 or 10, depending on which check land we're talking about, basics that go with it. So with that, we have a total of 3 type lands here, and we've got Tango lands later, so that's another 3. So that's going to be at least 15 lands for any check land in our deck to make it come in as an untapped duel. Very likely to happen. Sweet. If you want to upgrade these, you can do the slow lands. They are getting cheaper. because at time of recording, Secrets of Strixhaven has reprinted the enemy color slow lands, which right now is just the red-blue one. But I assume Reality Fracture in a couple of months is going to give us the allied colors. We'll see if they do. But yeah, the check lands are just much less expensive than the slow lands, at least right now, and that probably will remain true. We've got these 5 fixing lands. We have Command Tower, of course. This is the same text as Arcane Signet. Taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, so blue, black, or red in this deck. But it's in our land base, so it's an untapped tri-land. Of course we're going to run that. We would run a tapped tri-land, like Path of Ancestry. This is a tap land with the same text as Command Tower, taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. And it also says when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we get a scry. In this deck, we are running no other cards that are tieflings or warriors. So only Zevlor is going to give us a scry with Path of Ancestry, because of course Zevlor shares types with himself. However, as a tapped tri-land, still worth running Path of Ancestry even if we never get that scry. Solid. Similarly, Exotic Orchard. This, if Command Tower is the land version of Arcane Signet, this is the land version of Fellwar Stone. It taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. This is great for us. Works just like the Fellwar Stone, but it's in our land base. If an opponent is running like a Chromatic Lantern and makes all their lands able to tap for any color, so too can our Exotic Orchard. Even cooler, if an opponent's running an Exotic Orchard, then their orchard sees our other lands and our orchard sees their orchard. So our orchard can tap for any color of mana that any of our lands can produce. Sweet. We've got Myriad Landscape as well. This is a tap land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type. So in this deck, 2 basic islands, 2 basic swamps, or 2 basic mountains, the last of which is what we're normally doing. Then we put those on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. So even though the Myriad Landscape itself comes in tapped, and these lands it finds come in tapped, and we have to pay 2 and sack it to do it, it is 1 land drop that eventually becomes 2 lands in play. So it is slow acceleration for us. Usually this works for us to find a couple of mountains if that's what we're looking for. If we are just missing out on our swamps or our islands, we've got Myriad Landscape to go find it for us. It's just a nice option for us in this deck, and it's a low cost of inclusion. Similarly, Temple of the False God. This is a land that not everyone loves, but it's an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana. We just can't activate it at all unless we control 4 or more other lands, so 5 or more lands including itself. So yes, while this is acceleration that doesn't help us early on, if our opening hand is a Myriad Landscape and a Temple of the False God and no other mana sources, yeah, mulligan that. But this will, if it's our 5th land, jumps us from making 4 mana to making 6, which can be a big deal for us, especially with our commander. We just tap Temple of the False God, and it's like Sol Ring in that it just powers our commander's ability, and that's pretty great for us. So yeah. We are running all 3 Pain lands in our colors. We use Underground River as an example. These are the same as our Talismans, just in our land base. They tap for colorless, or they tap for 1 of 2 colors if we're willing to let them do a damage to us, which, like I've said, we always are. Everything I said about the Talismans is just as true about these Pain lands, and otherwise they're just sort of untapped dual lands, so yeah, we want to run these. We've also got all 3 Scry lands. These are lands that come in tapped, tap for 1 of 2 colors, and scry 1 when they come in. Great. A free scry, fixing our mana, excellent. This is all we really need from these. But if you want to upgrade them, you could go to the Surveil lands. Surveil lands are much more expensive, but they have the dual types, and they surveil rather than scrying, which is, in this deck, pretty similar, but would be totally fine. Just a lot more pricey. I mentioned we're running the Tango lands. We use the new Scorched Geyser as an example. These are typed duals, so this is an island and a mountain. They're my taps for blue or red. And it comes in tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. So like the slow lands, but it requires them to be basic. We only have 14 basics in our library, but we have a few ways to fetch them, so it is not unthinkable that these Tango lands will come in as untapped duals. And if they come in as a tapped dual, that's totally fine as well. They're helping us with our check lands and fixing our mana in the process. we are running Crumbling Necropolis as well. It's a tap land that makes all 3 of our colors. So it's a worse Path of Ancestry in this deck by a little bit, which is still totally fine. Making all of our colors on a tap land, great. No complaints on that. If you were to want to upgrade this, you could go to the Xander's Lounge Triome, which not only has all 3 of the basic land types, but can be cycled for 3 generic mana as well. Just a lot more money. Yeah. Finally, we have these 3 utility lands. We're running Arcane Lighthouse, which is dropped in price thanks to Secrets of Strixhaven Commander. That's great. Taps for colorless, or we can pay 1 and tap it, and until end of turn, creatures your opponents control lose Hexproof and Shroud, and can't have Hexproof or Shroud. So this turns off Swiftfoot Boots, it turns off Lightning Greaves, it turns off any kind of like Tamio's Epiphanies. Tamio's Safekeeping, there you go. Tamio's Epiphany is a 4-mana blue spell from War of the Spark that scries and draws cards. Anyway, Arcane Lighthouse is in this deck so that we can threaten any creature in play. Obviously, this doesn't get around Ward, but we can pay for Ward. That's fine. Arcane Lighthouse lets us pay 2 mana, essentially, 1 and tapping the Lighthouse itself, and we get rid of all the Shroud and Hexproof that we would otherwise have to worry about, and we can threaten and steal anything. Great. Good luck, Avacyn players. We're going to lose to Avacyn. Demolition Field is next. As I often like to say, the power level of the decks that I build for this channel is such that it's usually intended for pods of people that most of the time just don't want to see any land destruction. Not just mass land denial, but any lands lost at all. People just don't want to lose their mana. And that's fine. Not everyone's looking for that in their Commander games. But you do have to have an answer for problematic non-basics like Rogue's Passages, empowering someone's Voltron commander, or Glacial Chasms and Mazes of Ith, stopping you from doing combat damage the way you want to win. Anything that would empower someone else's game plan or disempower your own is a threat that needs to be answered. And having a single one-off threat in your 100-card deck, it's not asking too much, especially if it's Demolition Field. This is a land that comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap and sack it to destroy a non-basic land an opponent controls, and that opponent then gets to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped and shuffle. And so do we. So neither we nor they are down a land, and so we're not out mana, as long as of course we had basic lands in our library still. But we've gotten rid of the problematic non-basic, and any way that doesn't cost mana, unless of course that problematic non-basic was something like Gaia's Cradle, you know? And so yeah, this is a way of addressing those kinds of non-basics that even a table that doesn't want their lands touched at all will understand is a fine answer to it. Finally, we are ourselves running Rogue's Passage, because you never know what kind of creature you're going to steal with these threaten effects, and if you've got the mana left over for it, might as well make those creatures unblockable. So an untapped land taps for colorless, or we can make target creature unblockable this turn for 4 and tap. Great for us to use for our own creatures. We can also use this politically by making a deal with an opponent and making their creature unblockable, as long as we let them attack first so they can't attack us with it after we've made it unblockable. Or we can use this in sort of a strategic way, letting our opponents attack each other, and when they do, we step in before blockers are declared and make one of their creatures unblockable, thereby using their attack step to our benefit, because their opponent is our opponent too. Cool. Rogue's Passage does a lot for us. In this deck, it's usually not going to come up because we mostly need our mana for our spells and activating Zevlor, but it can't hurt and the cost of inclusion is low, so why not? And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Baldur's Gate Commander decks every Monday until I've done them all. So let me know in the comments which commander or background you are most excited to see. I would love to know. And thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live. Consider becoming a member of this channel on YouTube or joining my Patreon at patreon.com/secondmonitormagic. And remember, most of all, that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.